Years ago, I built an over-engineered phone stand, and I only just found the footage. So here's a project from the early 20s. I didn't think to record anything initially, so a lot of the woodworking is missing, but there's still plenty of stuff to go through. This is what I've got so far, nothing too fancy. And I've built it so that any of these angles that I put the phone at, the front bar won't get in the way of my lens. And I've got this hole cut out of the vertical section so that I can flip my phone upside down and still get all of these lower angles as well. When I made this thing, I was trying to film really close to a desktop. Well, close to a work surface. I was in a dimly lit kitchen, and the lower I could get, the better. I also had to cut this notch out of the base. Before I did that, about half of my frame was being cut off, so it was a bit of a surprise alteration that I had to make on the fly. Next, I had to stick LEDs onto it, and I considered just sticking them on the surface. But I decided that I wanted to cut channels out of the wood so that I could recess the lights. I wanted to also make a diffusion layer that I could stick over top, and this was step one in the process. So yeah, I got the channel carved out. I don't own a lot of tools, and my one chisel was way too big for this. So I actually ended up grinding down a flathead screwdriver and putting a blade on it, and that actually worked perfect for this application. I'm just working in pine, so I think that had a lot to do with it, but I was able to cut out that channel and the LEDs fit perfectly. But before I stuck on the LEDs, I wanted to mess with the control box. After I got inside, I saw that I was working with a little circuit board with a barrel jack connection on one side and then two sets of wires leading in the other direction. With this new information, I was able to carve out the base of the stand. I was really hoping that I could get everything to fit into this small blueprint, but the barrel jack connection came up just a little bit too high. So it's the only thing sitting proud right now, but I'll deal with that in a minute. For now, we can see that I've got a cavity carved out for the circuit board, and I carved out two channels for those sets of wires. The first wire leads to a little IR sensor that's for the remote control. That'll let me turn the LEDs on and off and control their color. And you can see that I had to actually shave a lot of the plastic off of the IR sensor, which I'm sure made it really secure and robust. But to fit in my tight tolerances, it all had to go. Later I'll drill a hole in the front of the base so that the IR sensor can actually work. And the second channel that I carved out is for the LEDs themselves, and it bends towards the front of the frame and towards the other channel that I carved out. With all of that worked out, I built a base plate that I could screw into place. And I actually made it a little bit oversized and screwed it down and then sanded it all into one uniform shape. After that, there's a huge jump. I actually added felt to that bottom plate that I made. I drilled out the hole for the IR sensor, and I painted the whole thing blue. The front surface is white. I don't know if I would do that again, but it is. And yes, with all of the wooden parts basically done, it was just a matter of cutting down the electronics so that they would fit into it. And I won't lie, it definitely took some doing. I've got virtually no soldering experience, so this was very new. But I got all of the wires cut down and resoldered together, and when I plugged it in, it worked. It was really exciting to see this whole thing starting to come together, especially this part because I wasn't really sure that I could do the electronics. But now that I knew that they worked, I was ready to fit them into the system, and here's how that turned out. And I'm honestly really proud of how this is going so far. With everything fitted, the only other thing I had to do was work on the diffusion layer. And for that, I'm just using some old packaging. I cut out a piece that would work roughly, and I ended up sanding it down to make it able to refract light better. And you can see a piece that I roughed up with sandpaper beside a normal piece, and yeah, I think it made a huge difference. Once I had that ready to go, I just cut it to the right shape, and I think I just glued it on. Honestly, I can't even remember now, but I don't see any fasteners. I bet you it's just hot glue. Actually, yes, I can remember now, and I'm looking closer at it. But yeah, that's the whole thing. That's this ridiculous little over-engineered project. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I still love this thing. I still use it a lot. But I am no longer filming really reflective, detailed objects in a dimly lit kitchen, and because of that, I actually don't use the electronics at all anymore. And if I'm being completely honest, I actually really liked this stand at the very beginning before I did any of the alterations for electronics. It's still really handy to be able to film really close to a desktop, and when I'm not using it for recording, I actually use it just as a regular stand. Like if I'm washing dishes or cooking, I'll just set it up in my kitchen and prop my phone up on it. It gets way more use than I ever thought that it would, so I'm glad that I made it in the end. And yeah, going over this footage really makes me want to remake it, actually. If I were to do it again, I'd add some amount of grippiness or maybe some grooves in the base so that the phone can actually just sit in something. I do find that my phone will occasionally slide if I have it propped up in there, especially if it's in landscape. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Let me know what you think. Leave a like if you liked the video and consider subscribing. Other than that, have a good one.